Monday, October the 5th, 2020. Before beginning the meeting, I would like to read a short statement of explanation regarding the visual nature of our board meetings. Until further notice, meetings of the Skokie Village Board will be held electronically, with the majority of village officials participating via remote access in order to comply with the State of Illinois gubernatorial disaster proclamation. Members of the public who wish to comment as to an item on the published agenda or to comment during public comments must submit their statement or question in writing to the village manager's office, and all properly submitted statements or questions will be presented and read during the relevant portion of the meeting. Written comments may be submitted by email to citizencomment@skokie.org, by mail to the Village of Skokie, Village Manager's Office, 5127 Oakton Street, Skokie, 60077, or via the village's drop box located just outside the public entry to Village Hall. And now, the Village Board meeting will come to order, and we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Village Clerk Pramod Shah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Roberts?
Here.
Trustee Sutker?
Here.
Trustee Ulrich? She's muted. Trustee Ulrich?
Here.
Trustee Bromberg?
Here.
Trustee Klein?
Here.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Here we have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Gray Keeler. Is there anything on the agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts?
Aye.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Ulrich?
Aye.
Trustee Bromberg?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye, the motion passes. By virtue of the vote on the consent agenda, this evening the village board has approved the appointments of some people to our village advisory commissions, and I would like to introduce those who are with us this evening. And the Board of Health, Dr. Kumar is with us. And the Commission on Family Services, Jamie Garcia Jr. And the Human Relations Commission, Allison Pure Slovan. And the Plan Commission, Bonnie Eckstein and Sheila Lacani. And the Public Safety Commission, Cornell Collins, Leslie Post-Weisinger, and Melissa Vegas. We thank you for your offer to help the village. The commissions render an invaluable service to us because there isn't an aspect of the village that is not in some way represented from a commission. This evening, the Board of Health, the Commission on Family Services, Human Relations, Plan Commission, Public Safety, all of these commissions render invaluable service to the village. Obviously, we're in the midst of a health crisis, but it is also an economic crisis for the village. There's stress on families. We're all aware of the human relations difficulties as well as our public safety. Each of these commissions renders an important service to us. We thank all of you for the time that you will be putting in. Each of these commissions takes up hours of time, but each one also makes us a stronger village and improves us in so many different ways. So on behalf of my colleagues on the village board, I wish to thank each of you for being with us this evening and for the many hours that you will be devoting to your commissions and therefore to the residents of the village of Skokie. Thank you. We appreciate your volunteerism. And in that vein, we do have a proclamation this evening that I would like to read and bring to your attention. Whereas domestic violence is a prevalent societal problem harming victims, their children, families, friends, and communities at large. And whereas domestic violence knows no boundaries, impacting women, men, and children of every age, race, ethnicity, economic background, sexual orientation, and belief. Whereas nearly 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the United States have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. And whereas many victims are deprived of their autonomy, liberty, and security, and face tremendous threats to their health, safety, and economic security, and the health, safety, and economic security of their children at the hands of their batterers. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an, an excellent opportunity for citizens to learn more about preventing domestic violence and to show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy services and assistance to victims. And whereas commendation should be given to agencies who assist victims of domestic violence and devote their efforts toward ending domestic violence throughout our state and nation. Now therefore I, George Van Duzen, Mayor of the Village of Skokie, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2020 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and call upon the people of Skokie to raise awareness about the societal problem of domestic violence throughout our community and its devastating effects on families and communities. And it gives me pleasure this evening to introduce Michelle Kipmeyer of the North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic, who has worked with us on this program. And Michelle, I think you have a couple words you'd like to share with us.
Hello and good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Michelle Kipmeyer, and I am the social worker at the North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic in Highland Park. And I'm here tonight to call you to action in the fight against domestic violence. What we know is that incidents of intimate partner violence skyrocket during lockdown orders, as well as periods of economic insecurity. We know that as these incidents increase, access to necessary resources decreases. And despite this restricted access, domestic violence calls to our clinic have been up 44% during the COVID-19 pandemic. What we don't know is which domestic violence survivors are unable to reach us. Survivors live throughout all of our communities, and they may not know that we are here, ready to believe them and to help them. Domestic violence does not discriminate against any race, gender, age, or socioeconomic status. It is here in Skokie. It affects our economy each time an abused person calls off work. It affects us each time a person is cut off from patronizing our businesses. Most importantly, it affects our moral character. We have a responsibility to each other, and who we are as a community is defined by how we treat the most vulnerable. This year, I'm asking you to be bold. I ask you to unabashedly support victims behind closed doors, to raise awareness, and to use your voices to break the cycle of intimate partner violence. We all carry a responsibility to act and to eradicate domestic violence in our communities. The North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic is your partner, and I look forward to another year of fighting together. Thank you so much for keeping this fight a priority for Skokie.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Words well spoken and well taken by the village of Skokie. We appreciate it. Thank you for being with us. The next item on the agenda is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Duzen, and good evening, everyone. Item A is regarding the TIF grant reimbursement for 8017 through 8025 Skokie Boulevard for the Northfield Group Limited. The boulevard at 8017 through 8025 Skokie Boulevard is under construction and is slated for occupancy in late 2021. As a reminder, this is the 42-unit apartment building that is 100% two-bedroom units and also has 2,600 square feet of commercial space on the first floor. As construction of the project has progressed, it was discovered that there were unanticipated and extraordinary costs regarding relocating ComEd services. These costs totaled $80,605.27 and were paid in full by Mr. Levitas of the development company directly to ComEd so that construction could continue without delay. Due to the complexity of the power line configuration and necessity to reroute power serving the Yellow Line CTA station, cost savings were not an option. In order to maintain the viability of this development, staff is recommending that the TIF district share in the unexpected and extraordinary costs associated with this specific component of the project. Specifically, 50% of the costs to reroute the ComEd power from the alley, as well as the off-site costs to reroute the electric service under Skokie Boulevard to the Yellow Line CTA station. I concur with staff's recommendation and respectfully request mayor and board approval of a TIF grant within the Downtown Science and Technology TIF District of $55,000 to support the mixed-use residential and commercial project at 8017 through 8025 Skokie Boulevard.
A motion on the TIF grant reimbursement for 8017 to 8025 Skokie Boulevard is recommended by the staff is in order. Trustee Ulrich, seconded by Trustee Sutker. Are there any comments or any questions? Trustee Roberts.
John, as I understand it from your memo, $30,000 of this cost is really not on the property of Mr. Levitas, right? It's really, it should be borne by the village because it benefits it's in the public domain. It connects the CTA Oakton station to underground power. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, Trustee Roberts, you are, and Matt Brandmeier, our Director of Community Development, and Lynn Becker, our Economic Development Manager, have been directly involved in this. And so I'll just ask Matt maybe to say a few words of additional insight, if he would.
Yeah, the power for the CTA station is above ground now, and it shares the same poles as the power that we're essentially burying. So, that's the added cost. And then, that cabling goes under Skokie Boulevard to the station. So all that's got to be replaced. And that's how you come up with the 30,000.
Are there any other comments or questions? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts,
Aye.
Trustee Sutker,
Aye.
Trustee Ulrich,
Aye.
Trustee Bromberg,
Aye.
Trustee Klein,
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
Item B was included in tonight's consent agenda, and that completes my report this evening.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is report of our Corporation Counsel. Barbara Mangler is with us.
Just filling in tonight. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Items A and B of the Corporation Council's agenda have already been adopted with the passage of the consent agenda earlier in the meeting. Item C of the Corporation Council's agenda is an ordinance establishing compensation of appointed officials. This ordinance establishes the compensation for the village manager, the deputy village clerk, the corporation counsel, and assistant corporation counsel for FY 2021, and this is pursuant to Chapter 2, Article 3 of the Skokie Village Code, and is consistent with the Village of Skokie budget. Item C is up for first reading tonight and will be on the agenda for second reading and adoption at the October 19th, 2020 meeting. And that concludes the agenda.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a report regarding the CDBG program. Carrie Haberstich.
You want me to turn this around right now? Okay. All right, good evening. Tonight's public hearing is being conducted to obtain any final input to the village's Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, substantial amendments to its 5-year consolidated plan and 1-year action plan. This hearing will conclude with the board's formal consideration and anticipated approval of the plan amendments prior to their submittal to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. Please note, I learned on Friday that HUD will likely ask Skokie to amend its program year 15 through 19 consolidated plan and program year 19 action plans for a second time. We amended those plans back in June, but with this additional funding, they're asking us to kind of keep that together. Normally, they would prefer one amendment per plan. This hearing was legally advertised in a local newspaper on September 24th, including COVID-19 specific public input parameters and preliminary funding distribution with flexibility. Draft copies of the plans were available to the public on the village's website. And as part of this hearing, or as of the start of this hearing, no written comments were submitted by the public to me directly, at least. And on to the presentation. All right, let's do that. Okay, we'll just do it. Okay. So just a brief overview. I'll give a little background on the CARES Act, and then also just an overview of HUD funding for the year 2020, the proposed estimated budget at this time, and next steps for the program. So HUD's approach to the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, is to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. There have been 3 tranches with HUD's distribution. Back in March of this year, HUD awarded the village $361,988 to address COVID needs. Tranche 2 went directly to states and U.S. territories, so we were not a part of that round of funding. And then Tranche 3 was announced in last month. And we're receiving $443,475, again, to address COVID-19. So substantial amendments. We amended our citizen participation plan back in June, and we don't need to make any additional amendments to that. And the consolidated and action plans just adds more CDBG CV3, specific narratives and data to the existing plans. So goals and objectives, building upon our regular CDBG, and then also the amendments from back in June. So the primary focus of all of our funds will be, again, on services, supporting individuals, households, and organizations with needs related to COVID-19. We do plan on having a small portion of funding budgeted for planning administration in case we purchase some software to assist with more touch-free processing. And then capital improvements, at this point, we just budgeted a line item, but no specific funding. We hope to focus mostly on services due to the speed at which we can help the community. And then also, capital improvements also require environmental reviews and Davis-Bacon, where like project costs could be much greater. So we just feel like services are the best use of our funds. So just an overview of HUD funding in 2020. Back in earlier this year on March, well, I guess the March meeting, the 5-year consolidated plan and 1-year action plan for the current year we're in right now was $615,000 plus in what we call entitlement, which is the village has a population of at least 50,000. So we receive an entitlement every year. It's not always $615,000, but there is an amount that we receive every year. And then for the two funding distributions, one back in March and then one in September, those two add up to over $800,000. So the grand total is over $1.4 million, but they cannot be commingled. The CDBG entitlement is a separate amount. And then the CARES Act, every last penny needs to be addressing a COVID need. So the proposed budget with this new round of funding the distribution is very similar to what we reviewed back in June. So we're looking to budget $120,000 for shelter, such as rent, mortgage, and utility payments for eligible Skokie households. Another $120,000 for small businesses. We were able to help quite a few small businesses with the first round of funding, but we also had a few that were on our wait list. And then also there has been other interest expressed by other businesses that would like to participate as well. And $190,000 for other public services, very similar to the amounts, the activities that we budgeted back in June. And then also, just to kind of round out the number at this point, $13,475 for administration. This will probably change, likely go less than that, but in case there is some sort of software licensing that would help us with our administration of CDBG, both for COVID and possibly for use in the future. And I do want to note right now that flexible funding distribution, just want to make it flexible, so if there's other activities that we can fund, such as if there's a great need for helping with rent, mortgage, and utility payments, say in early next year, that we'd be able to reallocate some of those other public services towards shelter as well. So for the next steps, questions by the public and/or village board, and requesting approval for the plan amendments by the village board tonight. After that, we'll submit amendments to HUD as soon as possible. There hasn't been any formal guidance or training as of yet, so our HUD rep asked that I don't press the submit button until that gets figured out, so I'll just be at the ready once she's ready to tell us to press send. HUD is expected to review our amendments in less than 45 days. They've already approved these plans, so it's just a matter of approving the tweaks, so to speak, to the plans. And then after that, we'll be able to do funding, applications, and distribution. Are there any questions?
Well, let me first take a motion. But Carrie, listen very carefully to make sure I get the motion correct.
Okay.
Because I know that we have to be very specific. a motion on the recommended substantial amendments for PY 20 to 24, open paren, or PY 15 to 19, close paren, consolidated plan, and PY 20, open paren, or PY 19, close paren, action plan would be in order. Do I have that
Yes.
remotely? It
Yes.
is, okay. I can read then.
Yeah.
Trustee Bromberg, seconded by trustee Gray Keeler. Are there any comments or questions for Carrie? Trustee Sutker, and then trustee Roberts.
Hi, Carrie.
Hello there.
So when you talk about the funding for shelter, does that mean financial aid to people who need help with their mortgage, who need a place to stay, who might need to go to a hotel? Would it include things like what we talked about today with domestic violence to get somebody out of their home in those kind of circumstances?
The primary focus is for rent, mortgage, and/or utility subsistence payments. So it's basically trying to keep a household in their existing home and not being evicted from where they live currently, or losing their utility service, for instance.
So would there be any of those dollars that would go towards helping people who, needed a place to stay or needed to get out of their homes due to domestic violence or any of those? Would any of those categories fit into that section?
So I guess I would recommend contacting the Human Services Division. The other public services funding that would fall into that category where we could help in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Roberts.
Hi, Carrie. I wanted to ask also a little bit more about the housing portion. It looks like on page 20, think of the action plan that you're proposing that this could assist up to 24 families. Is that true both rental and mortgage, or is that a combined, or how does that, could you just give us a little more detail how that breaks down and or what you envision the money could help?
Yeah, so it's an estimate, and it would be the number of households that we're hoping to help. It all depends on the amount of need per household. We capped, or the standard CDBG regulation is capping assistance up to 3 months. And so that's how we designed our initial program and plan on continuing that into this next round with your approval. So there could be a household that just needs a little bit of help and maybe might only need, $1,000 or $2,000, where another household might need more than that. So it won't be it's not an exact science. So we're thinking it'll all average out, and we're guesstimating at this point helping 24 households stay in their homes.
This is going to be very helpful to us as a village. But when I hear the numbers of the families we can help, given a population of 66,000 people, you're not on the front lines, obviously, it's more human services, but do you have a sense of how quickly the money is being dispersed now, or will this last us into next year, or do you have any thoughts about that at this point?
We've partnered with Connections for the Homeless for the $100,000 that was budgeted back in June, and they guesstimated that they would use that funding up within the first few months of them being able to use this program. They do have roughly 4 other programs that should a Skokie household not be eligible for our specific program, that they would look for eligibility in those other ones as well. So they do have the capacity to help a household regardless if it's funding through our CDBG CV or COVID CARES Act based funding, or if it's another resource.
I guess it's just something we'll have to monitor along the way
Yes.
as we go.
Are there any, trustee Klein?
Hello, Carrie.
Hello.
Just one quick question. You mentioned that there was a 3-month cap. Is there a dollar amount cap?
There is not. We estimated maybe 2,500 back in June, but there are some households that have a need higher than that, and some that have a need not as high. So that's roughly an estimate, like an average among what's expected for the households.
So it's entirely on need then?
Yeah, well,
dollar.
there is kind of a natural cap in some ways because we're looking at households that are income eligible as of March 1st of this year. So they would already naturally have housing costs that would be more proportionate to a low-income household. So there is some kind of natural cap within the program's design versus having a household that, say, lost their income, at the end of March or early April, that they might have higher housing costs. We're focusing more on the households that basically would have been eligible on March 1st before they may have lost their job.
Hi, thank you. Appreciate it.
If there are no other comments or questions, would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Roberts,
Aye.
trustee Sutker,
Aye.
trustee Ulrich,
Aye.
trustee Bromberg,
Aye.
trustee Klein,
Aye.
trustee Gray Keeler,
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen.
Aye, the motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, the concluding item, is citizen comments. John?
We have not received any comments this evening.
Before we conclude, I would like to remind everybody that there is early voting in the village of Skokie. There will be drop boxes at Oakton Community College. There also will be in-person early voting beginning October the 19th. It's fairly simple. First week, October 19th to the 24th, Monday through Saturday, there will be early voting. Second week, the early voting, October 25th to November 2nd, will be Monday through Saturday, and then there will be voting on Sunday as well. The voting on Sunday will be the same as Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the county clerk's office has asked me to emphasize, at the early voting site, all safety precautions will be taken according to the Centers for Disease Control and the guidelines of the Illinois Department of Public Health, including mandatory face coverings, required social distancing. The availability of hand sanitizers will be provided by the Cook County Clerk's Office. Voting machines will be cleaned daily. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to call the village clerk's office at 847-933-8203. The voting, as well as the drop box, will be at Oakton Community College, not at Village Hall. OCC is located at 7701 Lincoln Avenue, and the voting will take place in room P103-104 on the first floor. If anybody, as I say, has any questions, please call the clerk's office. In the past, we've always had early voting here at Village Hall, but it was generally agreed that with social distancing it would be more appropriate to do it at a larger venue. And Oakton Community College graciously is extending us their campus. So with that, a motion to adjourn would be in order. I think it's Trustee Bromberg this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you. And
Thank
thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you all.